Now that we went through our introduction to small gas engine parts and the tools that we would be using to work on these engines, we're going to briefly discuss the four-cycle theory of operation to get a better understanding of what's going on when our engines are running. Our two objectives for this module are explaining the five events that must occur for internal combustion, and we're going to explain the four-cycle theory of operation. We're going to have many things going on in an engine at the same time for the engine to work. So we're going to work through these kind of linearly so that it makes sense as we go, but we have to understand that a lot of these items are happening either at the same time or very quickly. So the five events that are required for internal combustion, really with any internal combustion engine, but again, we're in the context of four-cycle engines. We're going to have a power event. This is where the air fuel mix is going to be burned and the pistons will be driven down to create energy. The exhaust event is where we're going to actually have that heat and excess gases forced from the combustion chamber. An intake event where the cool atmospheric air is drawn through the carburetor and picks up vaporized fuel to go to the combustion chamber. That mix has to be compressed in the compression event to allow for optimal ignition, and the ignition event has to happen. So the spark plug at the exact right moment in time has to be sent an electrical charge from the magneto armature in order to have the entire process start. So similarly, with our four-cycle theory of operation and the events that we just talked about, those have to occur for the four-stroke theory operation to happen. So we have four strokes in these particular types of engines. These are going to be our gas push mowers, riding lawn mowers, things of that nature, not weed eaters and chainsaw. Those are two-stroke or two-cycle engines. There's some similarities, but we're only going to be focusing on four-cycle engines. So with four-cycle engines, we have two upstrokes and two downstrokes. The first stroke that we'll talk about is the power stroke. That's a downstroke when the piston is actually being forced down by the internal explosion to create power. An upstroke then occurs to force exhaust gases out. Very quickly after that, the intake stroke occurs, which is a downstroke. It actually creates a vacuum to allow the air fuel mix to go into the combustion chamber. And then the next upstroke is the compression stroke to actually compress that air fuel mix for optimal ignition. And all of this occurs in two revolutions of the crankshaft. Next, we're going to look at a visual representation of each of these strokes, and then we'll follow that up with a short video from Briggs & Stratton. The next skill we're going to work on is looking up parts through the Briggs provided illustrated parts list. For those of you in my class, one of your assignments will be to look up a set of parts and provide me with the correct part number and part description. We'll also use this for one of our online quizzes. This is a great skill for those of you in career and ag education. This is part of the state or the engine's CDE as far as looking up parts and providing part numbers and part names. But it's also just a great skill as a homeowner who has a small gas engine, maybe lawnmower, pressure washer, whatever. Should you need parts, you can access this and look up your own part numbers, order parts, or take the part number that you know you need to your local small engine shop. It's pretty difficult to go into an engine shop and say, hey, I need the ignition armature for a Briggs 950. That 950 that we see stamped on the engines, or the 900 if you're familiar with that model series, doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot, and pretty much almost nothing to those who are in the parts world. So what we need to know is the actual model number and probably the type number. I'll get into locating that in another video, but just know that right now we're working with model series 130G00. My specific engines are type 0022. If you're familiar with other engines, these are the 950s. Others, the 900 as far as contest engines, they start with a 1, 2 something. We see the table of contents. It's broken up. It's also known as an exploded diagram because you've got each part of the engine listed separately, kind of grouped together by what it does and where it goes within the engine. So let's look at how we use that. So that's our first part. You should hopefully recognize this as a tappet or a valve tappet. And you can look through here. This is probably going to be somewhere in the world of either the camshaft or the crankcase cover. So we'll look at around page 2. I see it there. So we look up. There's the head. Oh, I see it here. Associated with the head and the valves. So here's our tappet, the push rod that it would connect to, and then obviously the valves that it would connect to here. So we see that we have this number 45. So you go in, you say, I need a valve tappet, part number 45. Well, unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. Your service counter person is just going to look at you cross-eyed still because that's not a part number. What that is a reference number, so we can look up the part number. So I want you all in my class to write down the reference number is 45. Then what do? You have to go to the back of this manual where we have all the parts listed, and we need to locate reference number 45. So here's our reference numbers. There's 45. We can see that part number that we actually need is 591449. And our description is valve tappet. And that's going to be the same for just about any part, or actually not just about any part. So now if we look here, we know we have an ignition armature. And it's going to be directly listed, and I'll just flip right to that. And here it is, right there at the top of your screen on page 8 with a reference number of 333. Once again, you're going to go to the back of the parts list, which again, these parts lists I put on Moodle for you. We find 333. We can find part number 590603. And our description is armature magneto. And sometimes we can do it with even little parts. So say your mower's absolutely fine, but you broke this. This is the choke lever, which you can still run it, but it might be a little bit helpful sometimes to be able to choke your engine to actually get it started. So we can look in that world. That's going to be in the carburetor world. So we can start with page 6. And we can find that right here. We see it's going to be listed in 2 places. I'll talk about a couple of things in just a second. We got a part reference number of 951. So we're going to write that down. 951. We're going to go to the back of our manual. We're going to look at 951. So now we know we have part number 590614. And that's lever dash choke. Or you could write choke lever. I usually tell the students in the contest to write exactly what the manual says. That's why there's no arguing for points. All right, so let's look at something else with this manual that you need to know about. I'm going to do a little bit of pretending. So I have here the entire carburetor from one of these Model 130G engines, or the 950s if you want to go by what it's labeled as far as the bridge number on the side. So let's go to the carburetor page. I already looked at it and forgot. Let's see, page 6. Oh man, what do? We've got 2 reference numbers. We've got 2 carburetors. All right, so what we have to do is we have to look at the carburetor we have. And again, this would be the choke lever that fits here. So we have the complete carburetor. And we have to determine which carburetor is being described here in this manual. And because we know this choke lever is over here in this box and not over here in this box, we know that we have a 125B reference number. So when we're looking at this 125B is for everything in, this is the whole carburetor kit. Say if we only needed gaskets, we could look up individual carburetor gaskets with their reference numbers or bowl nuts or whatever we need. But this is the whole carburetor. This is 125B is everything that's in this square. And it's going to be denoted by the little numbers there. All right, so let's go to 125B. We can see that we're going to have 125B. We've got the part number 596203 carburetor. Well, let's talk about one more thing here. We have 125A and we have 125B here, and we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4 different part numbers because of type numbers. Now, earlier I said when I started the video, we have type 0022. So we're going to have to play a little bit of the pretend game because 0022 is not listed anywhere here specifically. But let's say I had identified 125A as my carburetor and my type number was 0032. So I would need to make sure that I look up the type number each time when I see this, because the actual part number I would need if I had type 0032 is this and not this. So let's say another pretend, if I had 125A and my type numbers were not listed anywhere here. If that's the case, you revert back to the original part number. Again, for clarity, if your type number is in here listed exactly, you use the part number associated with where it says use on types, yada, yada, yada. If not, you revert back to this part number that's listed first. Again, for those of you in my class, this will be one of your assignments and quiz grades.
The 4-cycle engine, one of the hardest working machines on the planet. Reliable, diverse, useful power in a compact package. Carefully designed and precisely manufactured to exacting tolerances, the Briggs & Stratton 4-cycle engine leads the world in production and quality. In overhead valve engines, the valves are positioned above the piston. The camshaft moves the valves through a tappet, push rod, and rocker arm. Overhead valve engines provide more efficient combustion by allowing the air-fuel mixture to spread more evenly throughout the combustion chamber. Now let's take a look at each of the 4 strokes and the components of their operation. 4 elements are required in an internal combustion engine to allow it to run. Those elements are air, fuel, compression, and spark. Air and fuel enter the engine through the carburetor. It's the job of the carburetor to supply a mixture of air and fuel that will allow proper combustion. During the intake stroke, the intake valve between the carburetor and combustion chamber opens. This allows atmospheric pressure to force the air-fuel mixture into the cylinder bore as the piston moves downward. Just after the piston reaches the bottom of its travel, or bottom dead center, the cylinder bore contains as much air-fuel mixture as possible. The intake valve closes and the advancing piston returns back up the cylinder bore. This is the compression stroke. The air-fuel mixture is compressed between the piston and cylinder head. When the piston reaches the top of its travel, called top dead center, the air-fuel mixture will be at its optimum ignitability point. A very high voltage is created in the ignition coil. The spark plug enables this high voltage to be discharged into the combustion chamber. The heat created by the spark ignites the gases, creating rapidly expanding superheated gases, forcing the piston down the cylinder bore during the power stroke. When the piston reaches bottom dead center again, the exhaust valve opens. As the piston travels back up the cylinder bore, It forces the spent combustion gases through the exhaust valve and out of the exhaust system. As the piston returns to top dead center, the exhaust valve closes, the intake valve opens, and the 4 cycles repeat. Every repetition of all 4 cycles requires 2 full rotations of the crankshaft, and yet the engine creates power during just 1 of the 4 strokes. It's the flywheel that keeps the engine turning throughout the 4 cycles. Momentum from the power stroke is transferred to the flywheel during the power stroke. This inertia keeps the crankshaft turning during the exhaust, intake, and compression strokes.